I call Asia my orchid child. She takes a lot of nurturing to grow into this beautiful plant. Arya's my dandelion child. She can have everything thrown at her and she's gonna withstand it. I think the system itself is broken, but government should never be your parent, and that's the problem. What happens is there are good people doing the best that they can with the resources they've been given to alleviate the burden of the system. So my husband Josh and I got married in 2013. We started to try to have kids and it just wasn't working out for us for a multitude of reasons. And so we started considering what our options were. Originally, when we were first licensed, you would just get emails with children and pictures and their story, and they would be constant. It was extremely difficult. We were not parents, and then we became parents overnight. And so that's terrifying. I mean, our second placement that we had, I literally had to Google how much formula do I feed a 5-month-old. I just could not walk away from this email. These girls were older than what we had ever fostered before. We went back and forth all day long. We finally said yes, and at 5 p.m., they called us and said, okay, we'll be there by 7, and panic mode set in. We had no clothes, we had nothing for them. It was just super chaotic. 3 children walked through my door, but we had only said yes to 2. We just knew if we were gonna be able to meet these children's needs, this is the level of capability that we had. The lack of trauma-informed care with someone who works in the foster care system created a whole other layer of I'm not just being separated, but now the safe place that I'm in is now creating an unsafe place because this is where I experience a separation of my sibling. I definitely did not have the tools to caretake for them, especially in terms of the trauma that they had gone through and the behaviors we were seeing. And ironically, I was a special education teacher. I should have been trained, right? I should have known what I was doing. This is what I had done for the last 2 or 3 years in my career, yet I had no idea how to handle 2 small children that arrived at my doorstep that had just had their whole lives ripped away from them. And so we were in over our heads. We had one child who was aggressive towards us and another child who wouldn't get up off the floor, and we couldn't do anything. And everyone pretty much told us, I'm sorry, this is just what it is. Figure it out. We were absolutely 100% drowning. It is mandated by the state that they have what's called a cognitive behavioral health assessor. They come out, they assess, and then they give a report to the judge. And so based upon her assessment, she said, listen, these are some of the tools that we need to put into place. And that's how the referral to Center for Child Counseling came about, which then finally got us into getting the help that we really needed. We met Arya's therapist, her name was Eunice, and said, I'm gonna be talking with Arya today. I'll gather some information for you and then we'll go from there.
Trauma affects the structure of the brain. It affects how the children are emotionally. Even though the trauma has discontinued, the brain thinks that is still living in the trauma, and the person or the child continues to be in a fight or flight response.
The way that children communicate their emotions and behaviors is through play. So she's not going to tell you, this happened to me. She's going to show you what's happened based upon her play. This was my daughter's way of showing what was happening in her mind and what maybe she had gone through. And so for the very first time, I understood this child that I had been raising for the last few months, because I could see what was causing those behaviors when I had never seen that before. I realized in that moment, I had no idea about anything. I had worked with children and I was a teacher at the time, and I had no idea that maybe if I just sat down with a child and watched them play, I could actually understand what was going on in their brain.
So Arya's play was really a call for help and needing a place, a safe place to express herself, really. When she felt comfortable, it became aggressive. You know, she played out the violence, the hitting, the utilizing the gun and shooting. And I was able to tell Bailey that she was playing out her traumas, and just to be understanding and reflect and be there for her. And as I've heard that it has had a big impact on her life, and that has been like so gratifying. Sorry, I get a little emotional because as a therapist, you don't know the impact that you really have on people's life. So it was great to see how my work, how I was able to help Bailey and her family and change her future and her life.
They were not actually adopted until March of 2020. So they were in our home for 3 solid years before they were adopted. After we took placement of the girls, we ended up expanding our age range. And so we typically ended up taking toddlers or a little bit older. Eunice really is the reason that I was able to understand how to parent any other child that walked through our door. Without her, we would not be in where we are at today as parents, or the children that walked through our door, or any of the other situations that we encountered. In all, we fostered 23 children. Some stayed as short as 24 hours, and some stayed as long as 13 months before they left, and some stayed forever. I am a parent of 4 children. I sit on the board for Center for Child Counseling. Eunice really taught me exactly what trauma is. Trauma is this huge, big boulder that can be in your life, but it's not the end all be all. There are ways to work through it. And I really feel that if it wasn't for Eunice and it wasn't for Center of Child Counseling, that we would not be where we are today.